Hello and welcome to my channel, Not Another Knitter, because there are oh so many knitting podcasts out there. My name is Liz and we are going to talk about the 5 beginner mistakes I made as a beginning knitter. Yes, let's get into it. Actually, before we get into it, some housekeeping stuff. I've been gone for almost 3 months now because I had surgery. I think I talked about it in my last video. I'm not sure. But I had surgery and it was painful and I'm feeling better. Oh my god, there's a bird outside. It went up in, I don't know how to explain it. It went somewhere that it shouldn't probably be. Anyways, I had surgery and I'm feeling better. I wish I could have made some videos while I was doing my recovery, but my setup is kind of weird because my mic, I have issues. I've talked about it in previous videos. I have issues with my mic and it's wired and it's connected to my phone, so it was very difficult to do that. And then on top of that, as you can tell, I'm in my bedroom and in a weird place that normally a chair wouldn't be in my bedroom. But what's it called? Oh yeah. So my lighting in my living room isn't the best for filming, so it would have been just gray blah 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 mumbling most of the time. Anyways, I did get a lot of knitting, a decent amount of knitting. I want to say a lot. I didn't finish 5 garments or anything, but I finished a cardigan, a hat, and 2 works in progresses, which was pretty good because the work in progresses 4 sounds impressive, but the work in progresses were very, very at the end. So, yeah. And then the same with the cardigan. It was pretty much almost finished, or not almost finished. It was halfway. So, anyways, I got a lot of stuff done. So, yes, let's get back into the video. So, the 5 tips I have as what I should have done as a beginning knitter. So just a little quick background. I had crocheted and knitted when I was in high school. I just did a little things here and there, nothing crazy. You know, this was early 2000s fashion as well. These beanie hats with giant flowers on them. And I also made little clothing for my stuffed animals and stuff like that. And then, because I was a nerd and I loved plushies, as you can tell, I still have one up here. But yeah, and then when I went to college, I was an art major and that took up most of my time. It was more of drawing and digital arts, so I was doing that for 6 hours a day. So the last thing I wanted to do was more wrist issue things, and I also worked at a grocery store, so my wrists were going through it. So I stopped crocheting and knitting up until the pandemic, when I graduated and got a job, and a friend asked me to teach them how to crochet, and so I did, and then I got hooked on it, and now I can't stop knitting and crocheting. This is actually the Ellie bonnet and a beautiful little knitted vintage piece. I did not knit this, I bought it. But anyways, back on track. So that is my credentials of a knitter, and basically I'm still pretty much an intermediate. I would call myself an intermediate, so I'm still remember what I was like as a beginner. So these are the tips I would like to share with you. You might have heard these before. These probably came from more advanced knitters, but these are just off of the top of my head. I was thinking about this while I was knitting the other day of dang, why didn't I do this sooner? And so that's why I want to put all that information here in one place for you. So, number 1, don't go crazy buying yarn right away. It looks fun. All the pretty colors, all the different indie dyers, all the sales you get. You know, I feel bad for beginners because they don't have Joann's anymore, especially if you're getting into it, because the sales they would have. Oh, anyways, it's sad what the state of yarn is now with Michaels. But anyways, so I got really excited. I was just buying stuff left and right, not really thinking about what I would use for them. I would try to have a pattern set aside for some of the stuff, especially as I got better and started understanding the fiber content and how much yardage I would need for a project. But I was still going a little too willy-nilly with what I was buying, and so now I have random single skeins that I'm like, what am I going to do with you? You're not enough for a full project. So when I was a beginner, I didn't fully understand like doing the math of like how much I would actually need. Not necessarily for a full garment. We know we need a lot of yarn for that, especially being a plus sized person. But like for smaller projects, I didn't realize like this is not enough for that. So tip number 1 is don't go crazy. Pick 2 to 3 knitting patterns or crochet patterns, whatever patterns you want to work on, and try to pick them in a variety of yarn contents, because then you can compare and contrast and figure out what kind of yarn you like to use and what kind of yarn you don't like to use. So pick cotton, pick linen, and you know, maybe instead of going straight to garment knitting or something really big, try something small. So that way you can kind of test what you like, what you don't like. But you don't have to listen to me. If you want to go big, go big. Do what you want to do. That whatever gets you into knitting and will keep you within the hobby. But yeah, my suggestion would be, you know, try to pick something smaller, even like tank tops with cotton yarn, and learning how it drapes and like how it feels against your skin. You're gonna learn a lot about that. So I would pick 2 to 3 projects, different yarn content, and different yardages, so you can see how much of what you'll actually need to buy. That's my biggest tip. Tip number 2, take notes, because this is kind of go into tip number 1. After you figure out, as you're figuring out what you want to knit, write it down. Write down how much yardage you used, what that fiber content was. Write down notes about where you felt like you were having trouble, where you were making mistakes. You know, all that information is good information to use as you become a more advanced knitter. So, you know, write all of that information down, and it will also help you in the future as you're buying. So say you're at a yarn festival or a yarn crawl, you can go there with more confidence, knowing like, yes, I usually use about 6 balls of yarn for this project when I use wool. That is going to be great information to look back onto. So yeah. Oh, and also I brought my knitting journal here. You don't need anything fancy. Mine is kind of fancy. I love this brand, Mousery. Yes, mine is a little fancy, but you don't have to pick something fancy. And I've been using this since 2024. I have to pause again. I'm gonna cough. Okay. I have been using this since 2024. You can... Oh my gosh. I actually put a pattern in there. See? 2024. I've been using the same journal, and I'm still using it since 2024. It has evolved a lot too, which is really nice because I love looking back at how much it's changed. You know, this was like one of the first notes I took. It was more of like a junk journal rather than notes. I kind of just wrote more of a wrap up of what I liked about it, what I would change, and then as I'm going now, this is kind of more of what I'm writing. It's a little more, I definitely could write more notes. I'm still working on that. That is something I struggle with, is writing notes and being more precise about like the yardage I use. So this isn't just a beginner. This can be an intermediate person who's struggling. Like, writing notes is so important, I think, and it will definitely help with your knowledge as you grow. And also it's great for writing all that tricky math stuff and having it all in one place where I left off. Again, the yardage you're going to use for your next project, if you're like, oh, I've knitted a cardigan before, usually use around this. So notes is another important thing to take. Okay, now we're on to tip number 3. Tip number 3 is make a yarn tracker. It kind of ties in with one. I went so willy-nilly buying a bunch of yarn that it got kind of out of hand. And then also when I was like buying more yarn at like, say, a yarn crawl, it was like, it would be nice to be able to look at what I already have so I'm not buying something very, very similar, because I'm like, why am I buying something that's like the same thing when I have it at home? And also, I can look back if it's like something readily available, like I had, what is it called, Illumani Sabri yarn, and I only had like 2 skeins of it, and then I realized I needed more because I was able to look back while I was at the yarn store, look at my notes on Notion, and then be like, oh, I needed 1 more skein to make a full project of this, so I didn't have to buy more and then be like, shoot, now I have way too much. So yes, making a yarn tracker. You can also find more information on my yarn tracker in my last video. I go over Notion and how I set it up, and as it's been like 3 months and it's already been like so helpful. I've used it multiple times in the yarn store, not necessarily like buying anything, but like seeing what I had already before I bought anything, and it kind of stopped me from buying stuff when I was buying like knitting needles that I needed, and I realized I had a specific yarn at home, and I was like, cool, this has saved me. So highly recommend organizing your yarn, whether it's on Ravelry or Notion or your own Excel sheet. Yes. And tip number 4 is, do not be afraid to unravel, frog, or completely just stop a project altogether if you're not liking it. You know, if it's not looking how you want it to, if it's not the color you really see yourself wearing over time, stop, unravel it, give that yarn away, sell that yarn. Don't put all that time and effort to something you're not going to like and appreciate. Or if you don't like the color and you make it for somebody else or something like that, you know, there's a variety of things you can do, but the moral of this is just don't push yourself for something you're not gonna like. It's just, you're not gonna wear it, you waste all that time putting into it. So don't be afraid to frog it. Don't be afraid to say, I don't like this project, I just really don't want to do it anymore, it's not fun, it's hurting my hands. Like, get out of here, yeet it. And tip number 5, try on your garments. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I was so adverse to trying on my garments. Like, it wasn't really necessarily a bad thing, like it didn't really take that much effort either, but like for some reason I just wasn't trying on my garments enough, especially when I got towards the end, because there has been multiple projects where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is too cropped and I'm gonna show a little bit of booba. So try on those projects, and if you're a beginner or even an intermediate and haven't bought one of these cords is amazing, because another reason why I didn't try on as many of my clothes is because I would have to use a yarn scrap and put it through, and then sometimes I would accidentally stab the yarn and put it through the yarn of my project, and it was just like annoying and a mess. And this has like been a game changer because you can stick it on your needles, pull it through your project really quickly. Just be careful. Mine, I think, is a little like cheaper tube, and so sometimes it pops off the needle, but it's still better than using a darning needle and then threading some yarn through. I really like this a lot. And then I can even like tie the little end and make sure it doesn't like completely come off this, and then try it on. And this has been a huge game changer. It really helped my last project, and I really, really love how my last project came out. So yes, these bad boys are very worth buying. Okay, now to recap it all. Number 1, don't go crazy buying yarn. Be a little more intuitive with what you're buying. 2, take notes. It is so helpful to take notes. 3, you want to, make a yarn tracker. That's going to help when you're out buying yarn. See what you have, see what you've made in the past, how much yarn you've used for a cardigan. 4, don't be afraid to frog. Don't be afraid to throw that out if you're just not having it. And 5, try on your knits. It really is a game changer. It will make it fit better. You're gonna see such a big difference in how you're knitting as you go, and do it often. Don't just wait until it's like halfway done, because then you're already gonna see the mess ups. So yeah, those are my tips. I hope they're helpful. I hope these have inspired you to go out and knit and be more intentional with your knits. You know, this year for myself, and you know, as a beginner, you just get really excited and you just want to make all the things, and that's great, because, you know, especially me at like, not gonna say like I'm super old, but I feel like I've like, oh my gosh, I've just missed out on so much knitting and I need to knit more. But you know, we don't really have to. There's not like these expectations that we should knit as much as we need to. Like, there's no way I'm gonna knit like every single thing I want to knit and wear all of it all the time. So, you know, my thing this year is to be more intentional, make it last a long time, especially with fast fashion. We've just been so used to fast fashion and like things falling apart and not being good quality anymore. I want what I make to be good quality and last a long time. So, you know, that's another reason why I want these tips, because I want your knits to last a very long time. So yeah, I hope to see you again. I hope these tips were helpful, and if they weren't, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But yeah, hope to see you in a couple months. Wait, not a couple months. Maybe a couple weeks. I hope to get a newer video out sooner and talk about, I want to do like a 3-month recap of my Notion setup, or quarterly recap of my Notion setup, and the not SoCal, because that would be insane. The LA yarn crawl is coming up, which I'll be joining. I know I talked about only knitting stash this year, but there are a couple things I would like to knit that I might buy, but I am going to be intentional about it. And you know what? Even if I don't buy, I had a good time just going around looking at yarn and hanging out with friends. So I will maybe see you soon, and we'll have a vlog about yarn crawl. And hopefully I have a better mic too. Okay, bye!